Good morning, everyone. We all have our favorite readings, and we all have those readings that we kind of dread. Asha alluded to it last week when she was talking about the story of Adam and Eve. And I used to feel that way about this reading. I used to pray that I would get next week's reading, which is how devotees rise, rather than how we fall. But this whole year has been a year for me to gain deeper insight, really understanding or awareness of the fact that all of our experiences as a human being are on a continuum and all really necessary. So there's not anything inherently wrong in the falling. It's innate. It's part of what has to go on here. It's part of how we learn. Last week I was at a nearby park. I just took a little walk, and there was a little boy in the park. He was between 3 and 4, but he was solid. I mean, he looked like a bulldog, and he was running. And I had that moment that we've all had where I could see that he wasn't looking and he was going to go down. And his mother was engaged in a conversation with somebody else. And sure enough, he hit this little rock that was in the ground there, went straight up and came straight down. This little solid kid, right flat on his face, flat on his front. And I sort of froze. And I watched him. I don't know if he was going to get back up or not. It was a big fall. And all of a sudden, his little head comes up. And then I watched him. And he turns around. And he notices where his mother is. And she's otherwise engaged. And he looks around, everything else in the park. I quickly turned my attention from him. I didn't want him to think he had to cry for me. And I watched this go through his mind. He got himself up, and he just marched off like this with all the power in the world. And it just came to me in that moment. You go for it. You were down, but you were not down for the count. So it didn't really matter. He realized that there was nothing to gain. I don't know how this happened for him, how it is little kids think through these things. But I just watched it unfold in him. I could kick and scream and cry, but there's nobody here who's going to pay attention. It's not going to get me anywhere. I was on my way somewhere. I'm going to get myself back up and go there. It was fabulous. I thought this is really how we all need to be living our lives. Not so easy, though, all the time, is it? We had, 2 weeks ago here, there was the Ananda Players, our local theater group, put on a play of a story that Swami Kriyananda had written called The Land of Golden Sunshine. And I know at least many of you saw it, and if you did not, the whole play is up on our website and very much worth watching. It really is the story of the spiritual path, of the soul's long journey, trying to find its way back to God. That's what it is. But it was staged fabulously. So up on this stage is a town, and everything is gray and brown, and it's very often winter. And there are winds howling, and it's raining, and people are pulling up hoods, and these women are working in a factory. And it was just set up that you could, just the way a picture's worth 1,000 words, a play's worth more. The utter boredom, darkness, tug to keep us where we are so that these women are just sewing. They just sit there for the whole time in the play. There are 6 people, I think, who do just that. You really get life in this town is not good. I mean, it's terrible. It's not even like a lot of our lives that are okay in moments. Makes the decision a little harder with a little bit of okayness. But in this town, things are terrible. And yet, when Lisa, who is the character who has a deep soul longing to move back into the light, and the light keeps appearing to her, but just in the perfect amount of time. Swamiji, as he wrote this story, and then the people who directed it had it unfold. When you thought you couldn't stand it anymore, after repeated tries on the part of God himself appearing in her life, coming to her in this burst of golden sunshine. And she keeps turning back and asking herself, should I really leave this? This is gray and brown and cold and horrible. Don't I owe it to everybody to stay here? Who's ever done this before me? All of the questions that we have, whether we consciously ask them, whether we're thinking it through that way, we see in this play how really hard it is to turn away from this delusion. When Swamiji says here, make no mistake about delusion. Take it seriously, because it will get you. And you could see how close she came to not being able to move away from this delusion. For some reason, a few weeks ago, somebody sent me, it was a link to what were called the marshmallow studies. Maybe some of you have heard about this, but they take these children and they put them in a room. This is a study of psychologists or psychiatrists. They put these children in a room. They walk them in one at a time. They're various ages, like 4 to 8 maybe. And they put them down at a desk. There's nothing else in the room, nothing. Really hard for a child. And they put a marshmallow in front of them. And they say to them, I'm going to leave you alone for 15 minutes. And if you don't eat that marshmallow, I'm going to come back in 15 minutes and I'm going to give you another marshmallow. So if you don't eat them now, you'll have 2 marshmallows. But if you eat the marshmallow, that's all you get. You get the 1 marshmallow. And then they have a camera on these children. And they did it over and over and over. And you watch these children, they look at the marshmallow, and then they cover the marshmallow with their hands. And then some of them put their hands up. One of them walks into the corner and faces the corner. Some of them, with their tongue, they go, how much can I taste this but not eat the marshmallow? Some of them poke their finger in, then they lick their finger, but they try and reshape the marshmallow. You know, it's very funny. It's a riot watching this. One of them runs to the corner, runs back, pounds his hands, and stares at that marshmallow like he just wants to kill it, but he doesn't eat it. And then there's one little boy who goes like this. And he stares at that marshmallow for 15 minutes, but he doesn't touch it. But when the woman comes in and says, great, you didn't eat the marshmallow, and she puts the second one down, he picks up those 2 marshmallows, shoves them in his mouth, and swallows them. It's very funny. But they collect data on these people. They collect data for years and years and years. And what did they find? They found that those children who could resist a little, they watched how long they could resist. And the studies show the longer that they could resist that temptation to just satisfy themselves immediately, the better they did in life. They themselves, throughout many years, would take tests about how they felt their life was going. They had a lot of self-control. They were just more successful. It was such a fascinating display of that. But it really puts right in front of your face, boy, it's hard to resist the temptation to just not put your tongue on the very edge or to touch the marshmallow, or to hide it and think nobody will notice that you ate it. However it is that we live life and we do that, that's what happens. When Swamiji said, I forget his exact words now, but sort of beware of delusion. Delusion is an extraordinary and subtle thing. Do we think that Judas thought when he was beginning to teach Jesus, his teacher, how to be in the world, he slipped for just that moment? He was sort of, I don't know what he was thinking. I know later he committed suicide, so he wasn't feeling great about what happened. But in the moment, which makes it even more poignant, he knew that Jesus was a great spiritual teacher. He was one of the 12 disciples. He just thought he had a little something to teach Jesus about how to relate to the material world. He was just going to show him this one little thing because I don't know what Swami says maybe in his mind. He was just so highly advanced spiritually, he couldn't get that he had to play the game that these people were asking him to play, that he had to give them respect and money and whatever else they wanted. And then, as it says in our reading, little bit of delusion, just a little taste. And then suddenly he was hooked on money. And then after money, he was hooked on power. And then he was up to no good at all. And you can just see how it can happen to us, how easy it is to go down that road, because it looks so right in the moment. What is it that Asha always says? She says, it looked like a good idea at the time. It does. Nobody's out there with a handbook for us, moment by moment by moment. So we're not going to not fall. And then the other thing is that Maya does a very good job at what it does. I had this vision the other day that Maya's out there putting on a show for us, brings us colors and sounds and everything that we love. You know, there's a song in the oratorio, I don't remember the name of it, the oratorio that Swamiji wrote, but it's a song where Satan himself appears. And it's always sung by some great bass singer who can just belt this out. And Jesus is saying, Satan, all I ask of you is worship me. That's all. Worship Satan. It's not so far-fetched, because really what Swamiji says Satan is simply that aspect of the human nature that wants to draw us out, which is innate in us anyway. From the instant of our conception, we're out. We all know that. We were singular in spirit, and from that moment, we're dual. So it's not that. It's where are we now, because we will be called out. How do we feel we're going to find our happiness? Where do we look for it? Because that's what drives every aspect of our life. Every aspect is where we believe right now, not what we read, not what we're supposed to think. Where do we actually think we're going to find our happiness? So here's Satan, that part of us that wants to pull us out, that part actually of the cosmic vibration itself that just keeps spinning the energy further and further away from the center, and we're paying attention to it, away from, I think it was in our reading today, that calm, centered oneness. Suddenly, we're out at the very periphery of life, living it. That's Satan. That's what Satan is. Swamiji says, the reason people wrote about it as hell, and that hell would be everlasting, which is, of course, utterly absurd as we think of it, is because when you're there, when you're steeped in delusion and wrestling with Satan, it feels like it's forever. You can't find your way out. You can't find the door. You can't see the light. But the hell is always only going on inside of us, and we can always make a different choice. But it's challenging. because here's Maya putting on this beautiful, tempting show for us. And what do we think Maya does? Here's this show going on, and Maya suddenly notices, they're getting a little sleepy with me, bored, they're yawning, I don't quite have their attention, they're beginning to meditate a little bit, they're beginning to come to these classes. I think I'll just up the ante on the show here. And suddenly, the lights are brighter, the show's more distracting, and here's the thing. Maya works one by one by one with each of us. It's like a perfectly fitted suit for just us, custom made. You know, we look at other people all the time. That which draws them, that which they get upset about, that which they think they must have in their lives. Any one of us can look at anybody else and tell them in an instant how to solve their life's problems. Because it's their karma, it's not our karma. Maya plays right to each individual. So it is so seductive that whatever it is, delusion is, I need this, I want that. What did Master say? He said it's one thing after another that we want, that we think we need, that will be okay right after we get that. And we never quite get there because Maya is so good at what it does. I had a friend who was giving a talk once, and he said, this is like Las Vegas casinos. He said, they're set up like a maze. You cannot find your way out once you're in. And it's true. And when I heard him say that, I'm a little embarrassed to tell you I know it's true. It's been many years since I've been there, but I've been there. And it is really hard to get out. And I read about this. They set up ways of sort of turning you around when you start to get near an exit. They have a loud noise going on over here, bells that make you think, oh, if you put quarters in this machine, you'll win. Or whatever it is. Maybe a nice food place. They keep you in the maze. You can't get out. That is the story of our life. Until we get so strong and so committed that nothing is going to distract us. Or if we fall, we're like that little 3 or 4-year-old. We get up and we say, okay, I went down. That's the nature of it. I'm not staying there. No, I'm going to move on. I remember years ago, you all know, I think I lived in Baltimore for a few years. And it just wasn't for me. I had absolutely a perfect life there from the outside in. But I couldn't stay in Baltimore. I was dying to come back to California. And as soon as it hit me, and I remember saying to my partners, if I stay here, I'm going to get cancer and die. I just knew it. And I got in my car and I came back to California. It was just so clear. I mean, Asha often talks about what happened to her when she met Swami. Without a beat's pause, right up to Ananda, dropped whatever was happening. And look at Swami himself. How many times, I wonder cumulatively in this room, have we heard the story of what happened to Swami when he read that AY? Shamelessly, Swamiji would tell us that story night after night after night. I read the book. I knew I needed to go. You remember there were a few last efforts to dissuade him, but that friend of his who was trying to talk him into some business, becoming an accountant or something, because that's where the money was. Swamiji just clutched that book and took off right on that bus. Why was he telling us that story over and over? Because that's where the end of delusion was. When he found his guru, when he got to Master, when we say yes, we don't have to be there, but we have to get ourselves up off the ground and turn our attention back in the direction of God. And we just need to keep doing that, or we just get to stay where we are, and we get to see what happened to Judas here, who was a very high soul. But it took a couple thousand years from what Swamiji said, for him to be able to come back and find freedom, which apparently happened not that long ago. This is no small thing that we're dealing with. This is the force of the spiritual universe. But here's the good news. We have to win. We have to win because God himself is planted in our hearts. God himself is the love that's there, is that force that is saying to our souls, whenever you come here, I am here. That divine presence will appear to us any which way, any way we choose. We can turn towards delusion. We can turn towards Satan. We'll find him. He'll be right there waiting. Or we can say, no, I'm going to keep bringing my vibration. I'm going to feed it into this cosmic flow. Wherever I am, it doesn't matter. Swamiji said that the cosmic universe materializes as concentric circles. And on the inside of every circle, the energy facing in is taking us towards our soul's aspiration. But right on the outside of that circle is the energy taking us away. And we have the option at every point, wherever we are on the circle. He also said each circle has its own bandwidth. That means wherever you are in this ring of concentric circles, it doesn't matter. Turn around and go in. Head in. Go to your heart. Go towards serving. Go towards compassion. Wherever you are, you make that turn. And God is waiting right there for you. That is just the most uplifting, beautiful. We cannot lose. We have to win this game. The only thing that's up to us is when. That's all. We can make any decision. And it's not about accomplishing it all. We're looking for nirvikalpa samadhi. We want to become, which means no longer creating new karma. It means the end of ego. No more karma. We want to be jivan muktas, that last life where we work through every last bit of karma that we have, and then we're free. But what if we're not going to get there right now? What if we get to just have these beautiful little experiences of the divine over and over wherever we are? We get to fall down in the park, then get up and run and have the time of our lives. And probably he fell off a swing and a slide and whatever else was there. What difference does it make? He was loving it. That's what we need to do. Find great joy in the journey. That's what we're on. We're on this beautiful spiritual journey. And all we need to remember is that every thought that we have, every action that we take, every decision that we make, we get to choose. Am I going to choose ego gratification? Am I going to choose stepping back inside this world of delusion that will happily entertain me? Or am I going to listen to my soul and move towards God consciousness? Every thought that we have, that's the choice we're making. Think about that. Every thought. Catch it right early on, as Master said. You go to complain, you go to blame, you go to be greedy, you go to criticize, whatever it is. Wait a minute, what am I doing? Why would I do that? I can choose to solve this problem in the direction of my soul's consciousness. I too can be Christ-like. That's what Christ came to tell us. Everything I am, you are too. All we need to do is listen, just right now. You know, Master's greatest disciple, Rajasi Janakananda, you know, this man had everything in the world. Well, not quite everything. He had a few problems. But he had money, he was smart, he had Master. He almost never said anything. He walked around all the time just saying, Om Guru, Om Guru. It was that simple. Om Guru. That's all we need to do. Every thought, every action, say to ourselves, which direction is this going to take me? And is that where I want to go?